The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire delivered the ultimatum. His massive form, standing 12 feet tall with skin like polished obsidian, cast a shadow across the circular assembly. Representatives from 47 different species watched as he activated the holographic display showing Earth's blue marble suspended in space. The humans have exactly 72 standard hours to surrender their home system, Vextar announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. They will submit to Zephyrian rule, or we will demonstrate why our empire has conquered 63-star systems in the past century. Counselor THYSS, a Serpentine delegate from the Medusi Collective, shifted nervously in her hover chair. Admiral, surely there must be another way. The humans have shown remarkable ingenuity. Perhaps negotiation would serve better than negotiation? Vextar's laugh was like grinding metal. These primates have existed in space for barely 2 centuries. They possess no significant military technology, no established trade networks, and their largest vessel is smaller than our patrol boats. What could they possibly negotiate with? The hologram shifted to display Earth's defensive fleet. 23 ships hung in formation around their home planet, looking like toys compared to the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts that had appeared at the system's edge just days before. The largest human vessel, the UES Defiance, measured 800 meters from bow to stern. In contrast, the smallest Zephyrian battlecruiser stretched over 2 kilometers. The intelligence reports are clear, Vextar continued, gesturing to the display. Humanity possesses conventional fusion drives, basic energy weapons, and primitive missile systems. Their entire civilization represents no threat to our expansion goals. In fact, their planet shows excellent potential for Zephyrian colonization once we clear away the current inhabitants. Ambassador Kreth of the Avian Concordat ruffled his metallic feathers in agitation. The humans have shown they do not yield easily, Admiral. Their history suggests they prefer death to submission. Then, death they shall have, Vextar replied coldly. My fleet carries enough firepower to glass their entire planet if necessary. But I believe they will see reason when faced with overwhelming force. No species is foolish enough to choose extinction over servitude. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as delegates discussed the implications. The Zephyrian Empire had a well-earned reputation for brutality, but they also honored surrender when it came quickly. Those who resisted faced complete annihilation. On the edge of the solar system, the Zephyrian Armada waited in formation. 57 capital ships, each bristling with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes, formed a crescent that could be seen from Earth's observatories. The flagship Dominion's Wrath measured over 4 kilometers in length, its hull covered in weapon emplacements that could shatter moons. Captain Zarachun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, Earth's flagship, as she reviewed the tactical display. The numbers were beyond hopeless. Each enemy dreadnought outgunned her entire fleet combined. Her crew of 400 souls represented some of humanity's finest warriors, but they faced an enemy that had perfected the art of interstellar warfare over millennia. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez called from the communication station. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. The main screen flickered to life, revealing Fleet Admiral Sarah Washington in her underground bunker. The old woman's face showed the strain of the past week, but her voice remained steady. Captain Chun, the Zephyrian ultimatum expires in 18 hours. The Global Defense Council has reached a decision. Will we be surrendering, Admiral? Chun asked, though she dreaded the answer. Washington smiled grimly. Not exactly. Project Lazarus has been approved for immediate deployment. Dr. Elena Vasquez and her team are uploading the activation codes to your ship's quantum computer as we speak. Chun felt her heart skip. Project Lazarus was a myth, a whispered rumor in the deepest levels of military classification. Admiral, I thought Lazarus was theoretical research. It was, until 3 days ago. We've been working on it for 50 years, Captain. Ever since our first contact with alien civilizations made it clear we were badly outgunned. The prototype has been hidden in the Kuiper Belt, cloaked, and waiting for a situation exactly like this one. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, looked up from her console in confusion. Ma'am, Our sensors show no unknown signatures in the outer system. What exactly is out there? Admiral Washington's expression grew darker. Something the Zephyrians will never see coming. Captain Chun, you are to proceed to coordinates Lazarus Alpha 7 immediately. Dr. Vasquez will brief you on the mission parameters during transit. What about the evacuation ships? Chun asked. Millions of civilians were still being transported to underground shelters and orbital stations. They'll be completed in 12 hours. Your mission doesn't begin until every last civilian is secured. But, Captain, once you reach those coordinates, you'll understand why we've never yielded to alien threats. The transmission ended, leaving Chun staring at the empty screen. Her first officer, Commander James Park, moved to her side. Captain, what do you think Lazarus actually is? Chun pulled up the navigation data that had just been transmitted to their ship. The coordinates pointed to a location far beyond Pluto, in a region of space that official records showed as empty. But the encryption level of the data suggested something far more significant than a hidden research station. I don't know, James, she replied quietly. But if Admiral Washington is willing to bet humanity's survival on it, then it must be something extraordinary. Across the bridge, her crew began preparing for the journey to the edge of known space. None of them understood what awaited them in the darkness beyond the outer planets. The Zephyrians had dismissed humanity as a primitive species armed with obsolete technology. They had conquered dozens of civilizations, each time facing conventional weapons and predictable tactics. But they had never encountered a species that had spent half a century preparing for exactly this moment. Hidden in the cold depths of space, Project Lazarus waited in silence, its true nature known only to a handful of Earth's most senior officials. As the U.S. Defiance engaged its fusion drives and began the long journey toward the Kuiper Belt, Captain Chun wondered if humanity was about to make the greatest military blunder in its history, or if they were about to remind the galaxy why Earth's children had earned their reputation as the most unpredictable warriors in known space. The countdown to the ultimatum's expiration continued, and with each passing hour, the Zephyrian fleet grew more confident in their inevitable victory. Admiral Vextar had already begun planning the victory celebration that would follow humanity's surrender. He would soon learn that humans had never been very good at following other people's plans. The U.S. Defiance had been traveling for 16 hours when the sensors finally detected something that shouldn't exist. Captain Chun stared at the readings in disbelief as her ship approached the coordinates Admiral Washington had provided. Captain, Lieutenant Tanaka called from her station, her voice filled with confusion. I'm reading a massive gravitational anomaly at our destination. But visual sensors show nothing but empty space. Commander Park frowned at his own displays. The gravity signature suggests something approximately 15 kilometers in length, but it's completely invisible to all our scanning systems. Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from the quantum computer core where she had been working for the past several hours. The theoretical physicist looked exhausted, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who held humanity's most dangerous secret. Captain, we're about to make contact with the most advanced piece of technology our species has ever created. Doctor, what exactly are we approaching? Chun asked. Vasquez moved to the main screen and activated her personal access codes. The display flickered, and suddenly, space itself seemed to shimmer. Like watching oil dissolve in water, an enormous structure began materializing before them. The ship that appeared defied every principle of human engineering Chun had ever learned. The vessel stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull appearing to be constructed from a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was unlike anything in Earth's fleet. Smooth, organic curves flowed along its length, broken by geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Weapon emplacements dotted its surface, but they bore no resemblance to conventional plasma cannons or missile tubes. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Vasquez announced quietly, meet the U.S. Nemesis. That's impossible, Commander Park breathed. We don't have the industrial capacity to build something that size. The resource requirements alone would bankrupt a dozen worlds. Vasquez smiled grimly. We didn't build it in the traditional sense. The Nemesis is the culmination of Project Lazarus, 50 years of research into technologies we barely understand ourselves. When we first made contact with alien civilizations, our scientists realized we needed to think beyond conventional warfare. Captain Chin studied the massive vessel as the Defiance approached its docking bay. Where did this technology come from, Doctor? Multiple sources. In 2157, we discovered a derelict alien ship drifting in the Oort cloud. The vessel belonged to a species that had gone extinct millions of years ago, but their technology was still functional. We spent 20 years just learning how to activate their computer systems. The Defiance's docking clamps engaged with the Nemesis, and Chun felt a subtle vibration through the hull. Whatever the larger ship was made of, it felt solid in a way that normal materials didn't. Then, in 2169, Vasquez continued, we made contact with the Keeper Collective, an ancient artificial intelligence that had been hiding in the galactic core for eons. They were willing to share certain technologies with species they deemed worthy of survival. And they deemed humans worthy? Chen asked. Not initially. We had to prove ourselves through a series of tests that nearly destroyed our first contact team. But, eventually, the Keepers decided that humanity possessed something most species lack, the ability to use any tool necessary for survival, regardless of how dangerous it might be. As the airlock cycled, Chun gathered her senior staff for the transfer to the Nemesis. Walking through the corridor that connected the two ships, she noticed that the walls of the larger vessel seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The hull is partially alive, Vasquez explained, noticing Chen's attention. Keeper biotechnology merged with ancient alien metallurgy. The ship can repair itself, adapt to different combat situations, and even evolve new capabilities during extended operations. They emerged onto the bridge of the Nemesis, and Chen immediately understood why this project had been kept secret for 5 decades. The command center was vast, easily the size of a football field, with workstations arranged in patterns that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The crew numbered in the hundreds, but Chen recognized none of them from Earth's regular naval forces. These are the Lazarus personnel, Vasquez explained. Volunteers who have spent their entire careers training for this moment. Many of them have never set foot on Earth. They were recruited as children and raised aboard hidden training facilities throughout the outer system. Admiral Marcus Kane rose from the central command chair, and Chen was surprised to see a man she had thought died in a transport accident 15 years earlier. Captain Chun, welcome aboard humanity's final argument. Admiral Kane? But your death was confirmed. A necessary fiction, Kane replied. I've been preparing this crew and this ship for the day when Earth would face an extinction-level threat. Today is that day. The main display activated, showing the Zephyrian fleet still positioned at the edge of the solar system. Their formation remained unchanged, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral Vextar's flagship dominated the center of the formation, its massive bulk bristling with enough firepower to reduce planets to cosmic dust. Status report, Admiral Kane called. Commander Sarah Lynn, a woman Chen didn't recognize but who wore the insignia of Earth's most elite naval academies, responded from the tactical station. All systems nominal, Admiral. The quantum displacement drives are charged and ready. Temporal shielding is active. Gravitic weapons are powered up and targeting solutions are locked. Chun felt her mind struggling to process the terminology. Quantum displacement drives? Temporal shielding. Dr. Vasquez moved to a nearby console. Captain, the technology aboard this ship operates on principles that mainstream human science won't discover for another 1,000 years. We've essentially built a vessel that exists partially outside normal spacetime. The Zephyrians have 6 hours remaining on their ultimatum, Admiral Kane announced to the bridge crew. They believe humanity will surrender or face annihilation. They're about to learn that some species are too stubborn to know when they're beaten. On the enemy flagship, Admiral Vextar reviewed intelligence reports that confirmed human weakness. Their largest ships were pathetically small, their weapons barely capable of damaging Zephyrian armor, and their tactical formations showed a species with no understanding of advanced warfare. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, we've detected one human vessel leaving Earth's defensive perimeter. It appears to be fleeing toward the outer system. Vextar studied the sensor data showing the UES Defiance heading away from Earth. A single ship abandoning their world? Perhaps their leadership is more cowardly than we anticipated. Let it go. One ship poses no threat, and it will serve as a witness to what happens to species that resist Zephyrian rule. Back aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Kane began the final preparations for humanity's response to the alien ultimatum. Dr. Vasquez, begin charging the primary weapon systems. Commander Lin, plot intercept courses for the enemy capital ships. Captain Chun, you're about to witness why the Keepers believed humanity deserved to survive. Chen watched as the Nemesis's systems came alive around her. Displays showed energy readings that exceeded anything in Earth's conventional technology by several orders of magnitude. The ship itself seemed to be awakening from a long sleep, eager to finally fulfill its purpose. Admiral, Chen asked, what exactly is our plan? We're still outnumbered 57-1. Kane smiled with the confidence of a man who held cards his enemies couldn't even imagine. Captain, in about 4 hours, we're going to remind the Zephyrians that humans are the species that looked at nuclear weapons and decided they weren't dangerous enough. We've had 50 years to prepare for this fight, and we've brought tools that will redefine their understanding of warfare. The countdown to humanity's judgment continued, but now Earth's children were no longer waiting passively for their fate. Hidden in the darkness beyond the outer planets, the most dangerous weapon ever created by human hands prepared to announce humanity's refusal to yield. 2 hours before the ultimatum expired, Admiral Vextar received a transmission that made him question his intelligence reports. The message came from Earth's government, but instead of the expected surrender, it contained something that made his massive frame stiffen with anger. Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. The voice belonged to Fleet Admiral Washington, speaking from her command bunker. Humanity has received your ultimatum and wishes to respond with our own terms. You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet from this system and never return. This is your only warning. The Zephyrian command bridge fell silent. Officers stared at their commander in disbelief. Never in the Empire's 1,000-year history had a primitive species attempted to threaten them. Record my response, Vextar snarled, his rage building with each word. Primitive humans, your pathetic attempt at defiance only ensures your deaths will be more painful. In 1 hour, we will begin bombardment of your homeworld. Your species will serve as an example to any others who might consider resistance. But, even as he delivered his threat, something nagged at the back of Vextar's mind. The human admiral had spoken with absolute confidence, as if she possessed knowledge that he lacked. No species facing extinction spoke with such certainty unless they held a significant advantage. Intelligence Officer Cray TH, he called to his subordinate. Have we detected any additional human forces in this system? Cray TH checked his sensors multiple times before responding. No, sir. Our scans show only their pathetic defensive fleet and the single vessel that fled toward the outer system. Total human forces remained 23 ships with a combined mass less than one of our cruisers. Vextar's unease grew, but he pushed the feeling aside. His empire had conquered civilizations far more advanced than these primitive humans. Whatever delusion of power they possessed would be shattered when his weapons turned their planet into molten slag. Aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Kane watched the enemy fleet's formations through sensors that operated on principles the Zephyrians couldn't detect. The massive human ship remained completely invisible to conventional scanning methods, its presence hidden by technology that bent space itself around its hull. 30 minutes until we engage, Kane announced to his bridge crew. Final systems check. Commander Lin reported from her station. Quantum displacement drives are at 100%. We can materialize anywhere within the system in 0.3 seconds. Gravitic weapons? Kane asked. Charged and ready. Target priorities have been established. We can disable their primary shields with the first salvo. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console, where she monitored the ship's more exotic systems. Temporal displacement field is stable. Reality anchors are engaged. The Nemesis is ready to operate outside normal spacetime parameters. Captain Chen still struggled to understand the technology surrounding her. Admiral, how exactly do we plan to fight 57 capital ships? Kane gestured to the tactical display, which showed the Zephyrian fleet in perfect detail despite being impossible for them to detect. Captain, Conventional warfare assumes that both sides operate under the same physical laws. We're about to introduce the Zephyrians to combat principles they've never encountered. The main screen shifted to show weapon readouts that defied everything Chen knew about military technology. Instead of plasma cannons or missile tubes, the Nemesis mounted weapons with names like quantum cascade projectors and dimensional fracture arrays. The primary weapon, Kane explained, can target enemy ships by manipulating the fundamental forces that hold matter together. We don't need to penetrate their shields because we can simply make their hulls stop existing. 20 minutes before the ultimatum expired, something impossible happened on the Zephyrian sensors. Space itself seemed to tear open just outside their formation, and the largest warship any of them had ever seen emerged from what appeared to be a hole in reality itself. The UES Nemesis materialized like a nightmare given form. Its 15-kilometer bulk dwarfed even the massive Dominion's wrath, and its hull seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. Weapon ports along its length began to glow with energy signatures that registered as impossible on Zephyrian instruments. What in the name of the void is that? Vextar roared, his confidence evaporating as he stared at the monstrous vessel. Krath frantically worked his sensors, trying to understand how something that large had appeared without warning. Sir, the energy readings are off every scale. That ship is generating power levels equivalent to a small star. How did the humans hide something this massive? Before Vextar could respond, the Nemesis opened communications on every frequency simultaneously. Admiral Kane's voice reached every ship in the Zephyrian fleet, and his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Admiral Vextar, this is Admiral Marcus Kane of the UES Nemesis. You have 10 seconds to begin withdrawing your fleet from this system. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. Vextar's rage overcame his tactical sense. All ships, open fire on that abomination. Destroy it before it can bring more weapons to bear. 57 Zephyrian capital ships unleashed their full firepower simultaneously. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and fusion missiles filled the space between the fleets with enough destructive energy to vaporize moons. The combined assault struck the Nemesis with the force of dying stars. When the energy signatures cleared, the human ship remained completely undamaged. Its hull hadn't even been scratched. Temporal shielding held perfectly, Commander Lin reported calmly. Their weapons are striking us approximately 3 seconds before we actually exist in normal time. Kane nodded approvingly. Open fire. Target their flagship first. The Nemesis's primary weapon activated, and reality itself seemed to bend around the Dominion's wrath. The massive Zephyrian flagship didn't explode or burn. It simply began to unravel as the fundamental forces holding its atoms together stopped functioning properly. Vextar watched in horror as his pride and joy, a ship that had conquered dozens of worlds, fell apart like sand in the wind. His crew's screams filled the communication channels as they abandoned the dying vessel. "What are you?" Vextar transmitted desperately as his escape pod ejected from the disintegrating ship. Kane's response was cold and final. "We are what happens when a species has 50 years to prepare for extinction. We are the weapon humanity built in the darkness between the stars. We are the reason you should have listened to our warning." The Nemesis turned its attention to the rest of the Zephyrian fleet, and, one by one, their mighty warships began to suffer the same fate as their flagship. The Empire's most advanced vessels, ships that had terrorized entire star systems, fell apart like children's toys in the hands of technology they couldn't comprehend. Within 30 minutes, the Zephyrian armada had been reduced to floating debris and scattered escape pods. Not a single enemy vessel remained combat-capable. The Empire that had conquered 63 star systems had been utterly destroyed by a single human ship. "This is Admiral Kane to all Zephyrian survivors," came the transmission that would haunt their nightmares for the rest of their lives. "Return to your Empire and deliver this message. Humanity is not available for conquest. Any further attempts to threaten our species or our allies will be met with complete annihilation. This is your only warning." As the surviving Zephyrians limped away in their damaged escape craft, Captain Chen stared at the tactical display in amazement. "Admiral, how did we develop technology this advanced? This is centuries beyond anything I've seen. Kane smiled grimly as he watched the enemy retreat. Captain, when your species faces extinction, you become very motivated to find creative solutions. We've been preparing for this day since our first contact with hostile aliens. The Nemesis represents 50 years of humanity's best scientific minds working in absolute secrecy. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console, where she had been monitoring the weapon systems. The technology works by manipulating the fundamental constants of reality within localized areas. We can make enemy ships exist in slightly different dimensional frequencies, where their own structural integrity becomes impossible to maintain. And the Keepers taught us this? Chen asked. They provided the theoretical framework, Kane replied. But humans had to figure out how to actually build it. The Keepers were impressed that we managed to create functional weapons from their purely academic concepts. Apparently, most species they encounter are too cautious to actually implement their more dangerous theories. News of the battle spread throughout the galaxy within days. The Galactic Council emergency session was unlike anything in their recorded history. Species that had cowered before Zephyrian might suddenly found themselves re-evaluating their assumptions about human capabilities. Ambassador Kreth of the Avian Concordat addressed the stunned assembly. Fellow delegates, we must reconsider our policies regarding Earth and its human inhabitants. Any species capable of destroying a Zephyrian armada in 30 minutes deserves our immediate respect. Counselor THYSS spoke for many when she asked, what else are the humans hiding? If they possess this level of military technology, what other capabilities have they kept secret? The answer to that question would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. Humanity had announced itself as a major power in the most dramatic way possible, and the universe would never again make the mistake of assuming Earth's children were harmless primitives.